This is not theology. This is the cup. Okay? So this is the cup. It's very simple, very... Okay? But if you are like me, I love coffee. Good coffee. Not Starbucks. Good coffee. Okay? Sorry, but it's true. Alright? So this is good coffee. Now, if you go to my house, you're going to find two types of cups. There's going to be a coffee cup, and there's going to be a tea cup. I don't know if you know anything about these drinks, but you do not mix those. Very simple. Okay? You do not mix either or. Now, both cups are the same, right? They have the sides. Like if you get to paint this, you're going to paint, the sides. You definitely have to put a bottom, right? And for it to be a mug, you have to put this ear. And that's what makes it a mug or a cup. Right? So the law and the prophets is the same thing. Right? The laws and the prophets are pretty much considered in three big areas. Okay? The first area is this the doctrinal teaching. When you look into the Old Testament, remember, Christ is talking from the Old Testament. There's no New Testament written. Okay? So you have to think about that. We're talking about the Old Testament. And when you look at the Old Testament, you see pretty much three things, just like a cup. What defines a cup is there's three things. The sides, the bottom, and the thing. Okay? So when you look at the Old Testament, that's the same thing. The first one is the doctrinal teaching. The Torah. The law. There are some teachings on Scripture that all you have to do is to obey. Done. The second part is this predictive prophecy. There's all these prophets that all they're pointing is to Christ and after Christ. And one thing that you need to understand of the Old Testament is all these prophecies are predictable. They will happen. And it's going to join, this point is going to join after in this verse. They have to happen. They have happened. We're not talking just like these weird things that, 2 out of 3 happen. No. Every single one of them. And the third part is this ethical precepts. Which is precepts. Okay? Yeah, it's not Mediterranean, by the way. Mediterranean does not have an M. If you were here last week, does not have an M on the end. Alright, so ethical precepts. Okay? It's this moral law. It's not enough just to obey it, but you have to abide by them. Your life has to be based on these precepts, on these ethical precepts. So Christ is saying that He did not come to abolish the law and the prophets. But for what? And this is where the cup came in handy for me. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Now, how do you know this is a coffee mug or a tea cup? A coffee cup or a tea cup? How do you know that? The size? The what? The tea smaller? It depends what kind of tea drinker you are, right? The handle? What is in it? Okay, so Spencer comes to my house and he wants to drink coffee. Okay, let's go deeper into this illustration. He wants to drink coffee, so I know he likes his coffee mixed with milk, with sugar, with smelly things, tasty things. I don't know why you mix coffee. If you're going to drink coffee, you drink coffee. So what I do, the first time he came to my house and I knew he wanted to put all this girl stuff on it, I was like, I fill it all the way up to the top. And that makes it a real cup of coffee. You can't add anything to it. You can't. You just have to drink it straight. Right? He dumped it. So, as usual. So, to me, when I look at Christ, and He says, I did not come to abolish. I'm not saying this law is not worth it. Trash it. He did not come to do that. Instead, He came not only to fill it halfway, just the things that is convenient. He came to fulfill it. I love that word. In English, that word, fulfill. It's not half fill. Fulfill. Another version uses the complete. I love better the fulfill. This is like a cup. This is the law and the prophets that only gets to be fulfilled by Christ Himself. None of this makes sense. This can be a teacup. This can be whatever other cup. But the only way that we know it's a coffee cup is because it's full fill of coffee. The only way that we understand the law and the prophets of the Old Testament is because of Christ Himself. It is, to me, it's very remarkable when you look at that. How Christ just presented and said, hey, this is not going to happen just because I came to fulfill. I'm not going to abolish any of it. And those are the eyes, to me, that we need to start seeing. From now on, we're entering this really interesting path in the Sermon on the Mount. If you do not stop and think that the rest of the Sermon on the Mount can happen simply because it's God fulfilling the law, nothing from this point on will make sense for you. Nothing. I can tell you that straight up right now. So you need to stop and you need to remember that Christ Himself opened up His mouth and He taught this because He Himself is the fulfillment of the law. Therefore, we ought to do. And here we go for the next whatever months we have. For I truly say to you, this is a first contrast, okay? And we're going to go a little bit fast here. Do you remember the blessed be, third person? Then last week we were talking about you, second person. You are the light, you are the salt. For the first time, Christ Himself says, for I say to you. He's turning everything. He says, hey, this is the kingdom. You need to do this. But I say, I am this. And it says, until the heaven and earth pass away. Heaven and earth. There's a very physical thing. We're not talking about here, abstract things. We're talking about very things that we see. Until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke shall pass from the law until all is accomplished. Couple of things here. The first thing, this is a small letter, okay? In a lot of your version says iota. Is that iota? So I went into looking for, a kinesthetic thing, right? So I went into Google and said iota or yada, Y-O-D. And when I put Y-O-D, which is a Greek letter, okay? Guess what came up? Yoda. Right? We all know what it is. To me, I was like, yes! Even in that, I can use that as kinesthetic teaching, right? You have all these Jedi Knights. They're all big. They're all like, yeah. And then you have this little thing. And he's the coolest dude, right? He's the one that can beat everybody up. Right? It's not far from this, okay? It says, not the smallest letter or stroke shall pass from the law until all is accomplished. In Greek, you have these letters, and it's very different. In English, I couldn't think of a good example, but you have all these letters, and these letters have like little strokes and dots, and if you have two strokes and one dot or whatever, it means something, and if you take one off, it means completely something different. It's almost like when you have the it's, I can say it's, and it all depends if I have the apostrophe thing on it. If I don't have it, it has a different meaning. Have you thought of that? Okay, I have to think about these things all the time. So that's how simple it is. It's until those little things, everything. That's how perfect the prophets and the law is. Everything has to go by. Everything has to pass. Before. It says, shall pass before the law until it is all accomplished. Until it's all accomplished. Until this all accomplished. And Jesus Christ is going to say, I came to fulfill this. Do you see the parallel? I came to do this. So don't try to, put it aside. It's until everything goes past. Every little thing that has been written has been given from the prophets and the law. And then it ends up with this part. And to me, this is like the best introduction for the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. Whoever then annuls or relaxes or doesn't do it or doesn't live by it, one of the least of these commandments, little things, and teaches others to do the same. It connects it. It's not like if you just don't live it. It's like actually if you teach that these little things, they're not important. If you do that, if you look into the Old Testament, the law and the prophets, and you find something like, oh, that's really not important, and you teach it, you shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever keeps and teaches them, these little things, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. There's this contrast. And we got to be careful. There's a warning. This is a big warning for us. We can't just scratch the little things that we think is not important because our culture, blah, 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 blah. Be careful. All these things need to be accomplished. For I say to you, again, first person, Christ taking the authority. For I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the third time that is used the word righteousness. Verse 6, it talks about we need to hunger and thirst for righteousness on the Beatitudes. And at the end it says, if you are persecuted because of righteousness. That, to me, this is a very key thing. This is a deeper thing that we ought to be hunger for, thirsty for. Therefore, we will be persecuted because of it. And this is what we need to look at the law, believe that Christ has fulfilled it. And we've got to pay attention to every little thing within that. You will not enter the kingdom of heaven if your righteousness has not surpassed. This word surpasses or excel. In Greek, this word is like very strong. Really strong. And it's not talking about, there's like a bunch of laws, there's over 300 some laws that the Pharisees were supposed to follow, and they had a list of, there's a checklist, and that was the kind of life they had. Okay? And he's going farther than that. If you think about it, the rest of the Sermon on the Mount is based on this. Right? When Christ says, you have heard, but I say to you. It's going deeper. And to me, one of the things I was reading this week, it jumped on my eyes when we talked about, Christ is talking about the heart. He's talking about the deepest part of our lives. He's not talking about what you can do or you cannot do. And for me, today it's a very important day. That for us as a church, we don't just do this. But we look at our hearts and do what we're supposed to do. And I believe that's why we're going to stop here in a little bit more. And we're going to go to the Blackbirds. Because it's our heart to be with them in such time like this. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this morning. God, I want to stop right now. I want to understand to the best of my abilities today, right now, that who you are is the fulfillment of what you have called us to be, what you have told us to do. That who you are is just simply the fulfillment of what we know. God, your desire to reach into our hearts is real. So this morning I just want to open it up and say, God, here I am. Take it, do whatever needs to be done with it. In your name I pray. Amen.